Put this affirmation in as many places as possible. Write it down. In my world, nothing ever goes wrong. Look at it each day and let it remind you that everything that is happening to you is in divine order and comes with a lesson. If you can live your life in the spiritual world as a spiritual being, having a human experience, you become the witness to your life. And as you witness it, you say, nothing is going wrong. These aren't problems that I have to be absorbed with. Raj said in I Am That, nothing ever goes wrong. Meaning, when you live in the spiritual world, you are the observer, and you are not all of the boundaries and all of the forms and all of the things that we call problems. Be conscious of your thoughts, of the makeup of your internal dialogue. Know that any thoughts you repeat that are contrary to your divine eternal essence are keeping you from experiencing the joyous and complete life you deserve. Make an attempt to tame your ego by catching yourself when you persistently use the pronoun I. You can make the decision to take the focus off of yourself. The more you cut back on I, the more personal freedom you will experience. See how many times today you can start your sentences with you rather than I. Instead of making self-references, just inquire about the other person. Remember that you are not your country, you are not your race, you are not your religion. You are an eternal spirit. Seeing yourself as a spiritual being without labels is a way to transform the world and reach a sacred place for all of humanity. Another way of saying that is that you are not what you notice, but you are the noticer of what you notice. If you are engaging in addictive behavior of any kind, the most effective way to rid yourself of the addiction is to go directly to your higher self and turn this problem over to God. That's right, just turn it over, surrender, knowing that the highest force in the universe is within you. Simply say, God, I am turning this addiction over to you. I've tried everything else, now I'm trying you. And allow the higher part of yourself and allow God in to help remove those temptations of the senses that you think you can't live without. Practice releasing the emotions of fear and guilt and replace them with love, forgiveness, and kindness. If you're feeling guilty about your past conduct, remind yourself that you are inviting turmoil into your life. Release the guilt by forgiving yourself and vowing to avoid this kind of conduct in the future. Guilt is a waste of your mental energy. Everything that you've done is over. It all had a lesson for you. Using up your present moments, feeling bad about it, is only one more way to keep yourself from being fully and spiritually alive in the present. Send guilt out of your life, beginning now. It's just a thought away. Accept this seeming contradiction, the fact that your body will die and that you are also eternal. Surrender to this fact when someone dies and stop telling yourself that his or her death shouldn't have happened the way that it did. You can surrender and you can grieve. You do not die. That which was never born never dies. You are an eternal spirit, formless. You are transforming your life with this tape. Going beyond form means that you, the real you, the observer within, is ageless and timeless. But that which it is observing or noticing is bound by the need for things to begin and end. Make a daily effort to look upon others without condemnation. Every judgment takes you away from your goal of peace. Keep in mind that you do not define anyone with your judgments, but only define yourself as someone who needs to judge. Or as it says in the New Testament, judge not, lest you too be judged. Give yourself the gift of a silent retreat every day, even if it is just for a few moments. Go back to that key to higher awareness of shutting down that inner dialogue and know that this is your ticket to peace. You can just simply close your eyes in any given moment and retreat to that inner divine place that Robert Frost described in his poetry. We all sit around in a ring and suppose, while the secret sits in the center and knows. There is a secret within you, and you can only access it through silence. Give yourself a moment of silence. It's the greatest tribute we can ever pay to anyone, a moment of silence. Give yourself the same opportunity of one moment of silence. When you have the choice to be right or to be kind, always choose kind. Remember that you have that choice in all of your daily interactions. And this one key of being kind rather than right in any interaction that you have will do more for transforming your life than any course that you could ever take, or any book that you could ever read, or any tape that you could ever listen to. Be kind and give up your need to be right.
People who are grateful seem to get more than people who are resentful. You know why? Because people who are resentful don't understand that their resentment itself is what's blocking. And when they do get something, their instantaneous response to it is, it's not enough. It's not big enough. Somebody else got something that's better. I should have had this. I wanted it yesterday. I showed up too late. It's not the right color. It's not the right size. You know. This idea is not just good citizenship we're talking about here. It's cultivating this attitude of flow, of allowing, of permitting things to continue to grow in you, because gratitude is love. Now, the hardest part about gratitude for most people is the understanding that you have to also be grateful when things don't show up. And you have to learn, this is the toughest part, you have to learn to be grateful for that which you don't have, and for the suffering that you are going through, and for the experiences of scarcity that seem to be present in your life. Because in essence, until you can be grateful in these moments and understand that you can't have sobriety, generally speaking, without having known its opposite. Everything in the physical plane has its opposite. People who have been through addictions generally know and appreciate and are grateful for those addictions when they transcend them. You won't find very many alcoholics who are in recovery who will say, I resent my addiction days. Instead, what they say is, they were the greatest teachers I ever had. And I couldn't be where I am today without having had those. Now, this is true for all of our experiences. When people say to me, can you really say that you are grateful that your father walked out of your life when you were just a baby? Can you really say that the time that he spent in prison, and the fact that he never sent any money, and the fact that you had to spend early years in foster homes and so on, and away from the rest of your family, can you really say that you're grateful for that? I say, my father was my greatest teacher. I never met the man. But without my experience of learning to rely upon myself as a young boy, I couldn't, as a grown man, be teaching self-reliance today. Couldn't do it. Because to learn to rely upon yourself is something that you have to have the direct conscious experience of. And when you've had it, then you can teach it. And I'm grateful for it. I was having dinner last night with my oldest daughter, Tracy, and I was thinking about her mother and I, who have been divorced for 25 years now. And I was telling Tracy at dinner that your mother, even though we didn't agree and didn't get along, your mother was one of the great people in my life. There are many qualities that both of us could look at in her, and she could look at in me, certainly, and say, these are the reasons why it didn't work. But you can also do the opposite. You can look at this person and say, but look at these qualities. Look at the honesty. Look at the integrity. Look at these things and remember that. And my experience being married to my daughter's mother, to Judy, those many years ago, when I was a young boy, it seems like, taught me how to be not only a better husband later on and a better father, but it gave me direct experiences of being able to transcend my own pettiness and my own inability to relate at a level that I am able to do today. Without that, I couldn't be where I am today. I've often said to people, I am what is called a reverse paranoid. You know, when you ask someone, what is a paranoid? Well, a paranoid thinks that everybody is talking about you and that they're saying terrible things about you. And a reverse paranoid is someone who knows that everybody's talking about you, but they're saying nice things about you. So when you walk by and someone says, are they talking about me? You say, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't they be? And this attitude of being able to be grateful, not just for the things that are manifesting and showing up in your life, but for the things that don't show up, and for those experiences, when you get to a point where in this moment, I can now say, okay, it didn't show up, and there's a great lesson in this, and I'll get that lesson, and then I'll stop the blockage of abundance flowing into my life. That's what gratitude is. It is the free expression of the heart to the fullness of the universe. And an understanding that you're not going to get it all, that you are it all already. You are it all already. That divine, organizing, omniscient, all-loving, unconditional loving God is in you already. And everything that you need to be peaceful, to have love, to be successful, you already have in this moment. You don't need one thing more. Anything else that shows up is just a bonus from the universe. And you ought to be grateful for all of it.
As Blaise Pascal, the French scientist, said, all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. All you have to do is learn how to sit quietly in a room alone to access this highest level of pure awareness that is there. And when you access it, you begin to discover that you're not alone. Meditation, going within, leaving the chatter level of your mind and going deep within, what it does is it shatters the illusion of your separateness. You begin to realize that you're connected. The connection is not physical. The connection is metaphysical. The connection is not in form. The connection is transform, beyond form. When you get that, and you go to this level, first when you start this, you discover how slimy your mind really is. And you find yourself thinking these endless thoughts and millions of them, and they go on and on and on, and you just sit there and you say, what is this? I'm not doing anything, and I'm thinking, and now I'm thinking about how stupid I am sitting here thinking, and nothing is happening, and you go through this doubt. You see, doubt is the way most of us have learned almost all the things that we learn. We don't learn from knowing. We don't learn from knowing, we learn from doubt. And so when you learn from doubt, at the quantum level, doubt affects what you are doubting. Doubt affects the observation of an object. The introduction of doubt in that observational process at the quantum level affects what you're observing. So if you can't get to knowing, like you know you can still skate, or you know you can swim, or you know you can ride a bicycle, if you can't get to that level in spiritual awareness or higher consciousness, or in manifesting abundance for yourself, or in creating fulfillment for yourself, or in healing yourself, if you can't get to the knowing level, then what you're working on is doubt. And if you maintain the doubt, the doubt itself will interfere, because we're talking about now something that is not visible. It is invisible. It is beyond form. And doubt is right in there with it. So the doubt, the knowing, the surrendering, it's like when Deepak and I decided to do this together today, and whenever I come up on stage or when I write, I have this process that I go through I call surrendering. And you just get to a point where you know that you're not alone, that you have divine, invisible guidance available for you, and you go to this place and you do all that you know how to do in the world of form, and then it's like this magical, it's almost like you put all of the worries and the doubts and the fears and the anxiety and the stress and the wondering, all of that stuff, you just put it in a balloon. And you just blow it up and you tie it. And then you let it go. And you watch all of that stuff go away. And you say, I will allow the God within me, the invisible organizing intelligence that has organized me with a brain that is capable of remembering things that happened to me 20 years ago, even though I had a different brain then. I will allow that magnificent organizing intelligence that is somehow outside of my physicalness and inside it at the same time to take over. And whatever then comes my way, in the way of difficulties, in the way of problems, in the way of struggles, I will view, instead of as they shouldn't be happening, I will view as lessons, as opportunities, as something for me to learn, as reminders of the spiritual being that I can become. I will not treat it as, why is this happening to me? Because I know now that my life is nothing more than a parenthesis in eternity. It started in a moment, it was born in a night, to perish in a night, when the soul slept in beams of light endlessly. And I trust that intelligence. I wonder how many of you know that in the world of highest awareness, nothing is impossible. That it's really, I don't know if it's your story, but it is mine. And I have gotten lost on several occasions in my life. I spent a lot of years in an orphanage. I spent years struggling through addictions. I've spent years dealing with separation and divorce and the pain of that. And now leukemia. And each one of these has been almost a way for me to recognize that all spiritual advances are preceded by a fall of some kind or another. My friend Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, passed away a few years ago, used to say that if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. And the storms of our life, and the storms of my life, in particular this recent one, we had talked about this earlier, about this leukemia, has brought me to just, it's brought me back to, you're calling it Source, I'm calling it God. It doesn't matter, we could call it Irene, it doesn't make any difference what we call it, because the Tao that can be named is not the Tao anyway. But what came into my life at this time, in the last couple of years with this, are just very significant people who have showed up in my life, and everyone I encounter and everything I see, everything just looks different. And it's like a return to an awareness that, I mean, I am well, I am perfect health.
That's also the same truth is in the parable in that Jesus tells of what's traditionally called the prodigal son, which actually is a very ancient parable. In different traditions it's used. You all probably know it. The son is the son of a rich father, and he goes out. He says to the father, "Give me your inheritance," and he travels to some distant land and squanders his inheritance. He becomes a beggar. In other versions of it, he even forgets who he is. He forgets that he is the son of that father. So he sits there by the roadside begging, and then the father sends messengers to him, sends out messengers to the distant country, and they find the son, and they say, "Do you know who you are?" And he says, "No." And then he begins to remember, and then he returns to the father's house, and that's what I mentioned earlier, the return movement. And then when he returns, it says the father loves him more deeply than before. And to me that means this is the story of humanity. Humanity losing itself in externals, losing connectedness with the source of all being, with the one. Not absolutely losing it, but total unawareness of it. And so we become beggars, and this is the condition of most humans who are not yet going through the spiritual awakening, which in other words is not really your condition anymore, but it's still the majority of people on the planet who are not connected consciously with the source within themselves. So they are looking for scraps for fulfillment, and scraps is anything. From the house to the car to this or that, give me a new partner, anything to give me fulfillment, to tell me who I am. So they're seeking it there and there. That's the condition of the person who has lost awareness of the source. And then perhaps what the meaning of the messengers is in the parable is perhaps a spiritual teacher or a spiritual teaching that somehow you come into contact with, or the messenger could be, as I see it, could also be just the suffering becomes so much that the pressure of it awakens you, and then you begin to realize who you are, and you return then. That means you suddenly become aware again of that deep connectedness with being, your essential oneness with being. And the meaning of what the parable says, that is loved more deeply by the Father, I interpret that as meaning that when you regain awareness of being, which perhaps humans had a long, long time ago in the distant past, and that could be the reason for all the myths in many, many cultures of the golden age. Right. In many cultures on the planet, you have different versions of the myth of there was once a golden age when people lived in happiness, and that perhaps points to our original connectedness with Source. Then we lost it. This was our up to very recently, and now returning to the home, the Father's home, means to regain that awareness, but at a deeper level, because whereas before it was in your natural state, you may know from your own life when you have lost something, and then you come back to it, you appreciate it much more deeply.
Because if your prayer is you talking to God, your intuition is God talking to you. It's God talking to you. It's the presence of higher frequencies and higher energy saying to you, listen to me, listen to me, pay attention. There's an accident coming. Slow down. That person in front of you who's going slow, thank them for slowing you down. Because if you would have gone around them, you'd have had a head-on collision. Or there's somebody waiting up there to give you a ticket. How many times if you wanted to get around somebody, you want to get around, and you say, oh, well, and you stay, and then you look up there, and there's somebody sitting up there with one of those little ticket guns, ready to hand you a ticket from a radar reading. That person was put in front of you to slow you down. And it's not an accident. Now, here's the weirdest. I'm giving a talk the next day on you don't have to have accidents. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out running. And while I'm out running, I trip over a curb that someone placed in the middle of the road. I don't know how they did it, but during the middle of the night, they raised the sidewalk this much. At least that's the way it seemed to me, because it had never been there before. It was out in front of my own home. And all of a sudden, I'm like this, and I go into that slowed down time thing I was talking about before, and I see, but I was sprinting, because the last 3 or 4 minutes of my run, I usually sprint. And I'm sprinting, and I hit that thing, and I'm going very fast, and it's all concrete, asphalt. And I see that I am about to land my head on it, and I can see it in my arm and my side and my face, and I'm tumbling on the cement at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I get up, and I finish my run, and I walk into the house, and my wife thinks that I've been attacked by a polar bear. Because that's how I looked. Blood down my face, scabs, were going to be forming, and I'm giving a talk the next day on how to avoid having accidents and moving into higher consciousness, all right? So when I was giving the talk and I got to this point, and then I started pointing out all of the things, on my hips and my legs and then over here and my face and so on. And I said to them, look, I was at 100,000 cycles per second. I was really connected to spirit while I was running. I had been meditating. And then we have been having a problem with one of our daughters who has been taking a different path in her life than what has been comfortable for us. And she has experimented with drugs and drinking and has had a head-on collision and had to be cut out of a car, and she now had gone back into some more of that kind of behavior when we thought that was past us. And I was running, and I was thinking about her and worried about her and consumed with fear for her. And when I went into that fear mode and I got very, very frightened and very upset and very hurt, is when I tripped over that thing. And when you leave 100,000, 80,000, 70, and you move into these lower frequencies, and accidents occur when you shift back into the place where there are accidents at 20,000 cycles per second. If you can sense yourself in fear, in stress, in shame, in anxiety, in all of these kinds of awarenesses, and move out of them and get yourself back to God, to spirit, to love, to higher and faster energy, you can avoid all of these things. And when they happen, again, take responsibility for them without guilt. Not going around telling myself, I had this accident and I'm being punished and all of that. No. But that I now have the results in my body of this action, and I'm taking responsibility for getting rid of it. And I can't take responsibility for getting rid of it unless I take responsibility for having it. Not with guilt, but with your sense of everything that happens to me, I have something to learn from. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you for all of these struggles and tough times and accidents to remind me to move and stay in a higher place. The lowest frequencies are the frequencies that we call solid. And as we move out of the solid frequencies, remember that our eyes, our ears, these are the senses that pick up the energy and give us the information. As we move beyond the senses or into the higher senses like sound,
and light, we're moving into faster energies. So we've got solid, and then we've got this intermediate dimension called sound, and then we've got light, and then ultimately we move into the very fastest and highest frequencies of all, called spirit. And these very high and very fast frequencies are energies, and they are accessed by using your intuition and your insight, and largely through meditation and getting quiet and making conscious contact with God.
When you are in rapport with that from which you were intended, when you are in a state of creativity, a state of kindness, a state of love, a state of beauty, a state of receptivity, a state of abundance, when you are in those states of consciousness, you have joined the field from which you originated, and intention and you have become synonymous. And anything that you put your attention on with that rapport has to materialize into the physical world. It has to. Because that's how everything is created. And any moment in your life in which you are in a state of anger, hatred, or fear, grief, or anything that is not what the field from which you originally came is like, is a moment in which what you want to attract into your life is impossible. You have a choice. You can either be right and live by your ego, or you can be kind. You can either be angry or you can be love. And at every moment, in 10 Secrets for Success, the 10th secret says, wisdom is avoiding every thought that weakens you. Back in the 18th century, there was a practice in the world called slavery going on. And there was a man named John Newton who was 22 years old, and he was a slave captain, ship captain. And he was bringing a load of human cargo from Senegal in West Africa to South Carolina, 125 human beings to be sold into slavery in this hideous and nefarious practice that was so widespread in the 18th and early 19th centuries in the world. And John Newton was in the midst of a storm, and he thought he was going to die and he was going to lose his life and the lives of all of the people on this cargo in the ship. And he took out an envelope, and on this envelope he wrote down the words to a song. He said, "I once was lost, and now I'm found." It's in a moment that we call an epiphany, a moment in which we reach something called siddhi consciousness, a satori, they call it in Japanese, a satori, which is an instant awakening. And he realized in that moment, as he was writing these words to this song down on the back of this envelope, that what he was doing was in violation of the universal mind from which he originated, that it was against the laws of the universe to treat any other human being or any other creatures of life. Now the storm passed, and he survived, but he looked on that piece of paper that he had written these words on, and he turned his ship around, and he went back to Africa, and he released the 125 people that he had in those holds, and he went back to England, and for the next 55 years, until his 77th birthday, he became the most ardent abolitionist in the world, speaking out against the evils of slavery. In one instant, in Zen Buddhism, they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When you have that level of readiness, whatever you need, As it says in A Course in Miracles, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. It would never be there for you. For those of you who've decided to quit smoking, it will be easy because you will have guidance there for you at every moment that you ever are tempted to go back, or whatever it is that you want to attract into your life. And the words to that song became perhaps the most spiritual song ever recorded. It's called Amazing Grace. I once was lost, and now I'm found. And it was grace that taught my heart to feel. It was grace. It was God. It was returning to source that turned everything around. In the Tao it says, there's a time for everything, and everything in its time. There's a time for everything. Listen to this. There's a time for being ahead, and a time for being at peace. There's a time for being in motion, and a time for being at rest. There's a time for being vigorous, and a time for being exhausted. And in the Bible, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under the sun. I practice, this was so helpful to me, particularly as I do my yoga practice. And in my yoga practice, it's there are some very exhausting postures. I do this Bikram hot yoga, all right? So it's 105 or between 105 and 110 for 90 minutes. And there's one that I used to hate. It's called triangle. I started practicing what the Tao teaches, and I remembered there's a time for being exhausted. There's a time for that. And as I practiced that, I said, and there's a time for being at rest. And it's coming, hopefully soon. But in your life, there's an awareness that there is a time for all the things that go on that you think shouldn't be happening. In the Tao it says that hidden in all misfortune is good fortune. Hidden in the misfortune that you have is good fortune, because no storm can last forever. Even nature cannot create a storm that lasts forever. Ultimately, hidden within every storm is calmness. Hidden within every flood is drought and dryness. Hidden within all of the storms of your life is the peace that you desire. And it leans on you if you stop telling yourself and just let yourself go with it, to be at harmony with it, rather than trying. You can see why this is called the wisest book ever written, and we're just touching on it here, just touching on this. Lao Tzu was green before Al Gore. He was. This is verse 39 of the Tao Te Ching. When man interferes with the Tao, the sky becomes filthy, the earth becomes depleted, the equilibrium crumbles, creatures become extinct, therefore nobility is rooted in humility. Do you know that every one of your children have the anchor of the universe located within them? And that Khalil Gibran, this is a paraphrase, he said, your children are not your children. They are the products of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not for you. They're not there for you. So what are you doing interfering in their lives? Now, I'm not talking about letting them play out in the traffic or play at the edge of a swimming pool if they don't know how to swim. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I called this when I was working on this and living this and practicing this for that full year of 2006, the bite your tongue, zip your lip verses of the Tao. We have parents, I see them a lot, they're called helicopter parents. Because they're always hovering. They're hovering over their kids and they're telling them what to do and what not to do. And my son came over from England, my son Shane, and he was going to get ready to go to college in America. And my wife said to me, so you're going to take him and show him about registration, right? I said, oh yeah, I'll be doing that. She said, well, make sure that you help him because he doesn't have any idea how to register at the school, this great big school with thousands of people. I said, yeah, and I do, right? I would know how to register kids at school, you know.
And so Shane got in the car, and I said, it's all going to be fine. It'll all be fine. And we drive over to the campus, and I drop him off, and I have my tennis racket in the back. And he said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm a prophet. I said, I get paid by the thought. And I have a tennis match, and then I have to walk on the beach so that I get paid by the thought. He said, but what about the registration? I said, well, the registration, I said, you'll do a lot like I did when I learned to register. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you'll just go up to the people and say, where is registration? And they'll say, it's over there where all of those people are all lined up. Because I remember those days in a college of 40,000 students or so, finding out how to register. Tracy, did I take you to register, honey? No. So he said, you mean you're just going? I said, yeah, you just go over there. I said, you want daddy to walk with you over and take you through graduate? You're 18 years old and you want daddy to register you? He said, oh, no, I wouldn't want that. So we got home at the end of the evening, when I got back home, and my wife had said to me, she said, did you help Shane at registration? Oh, I said, I gave him so much help. Probably the most help he ever had in his life. I taught him how to do things for himself. And so that I wouldn't have to be interfering and hovering over and figuring it all out for them. My children know that when their science project comes up, that I'm there for consultation, but I passed science. I got through that myself. And you'll be doing your own science project. If I can help you, I'll be happy to help you, but I'm not going to be getting the glue and figuring out how to make a time clock and all of that. I said, you know, just look at a clock. That's how you tell time for me, whatever it might be. And it's not an uncaring, and it's not a callous attitude at all. It's an awareness that your children have the anchor of the universe located within them. That's what Lao Tzu said.